Chris Farber. How are we doing tonight? Good. How many of you have seen Moriah? How many of you have never seen Moriah? Oh boy, we're in for a treat tonight. You guys are really going to enjoy her. She'll be out in a few minutes, and before she comes out here, I want to tell you guys about a few shows. For those of you who have never seen him, Tim Wilson, great comedian. Might have heard him on the Bob and Tom show. He's actually going to be here next Saturday night. 2 shows, 7 and 9. So if you want to come out for that, make sure you pick up your tickets for the show. There's some still available and some great laughs. And then also, if you haven't made plans for New Year's Eve yet, you can celebrate right here inside Cabaret. They're welcoming the award-winning Chicagoland DJs, Scott Smokin' Sills from 9 to 1, and there's no cover, so make plans to come down and enjoy. So Moriah has been on a number of shows. How many of you have seen her on A&E's Paranormal Cops or Hoarders? She'll be out here in just a few minutes, but before we watch the show this evening, I want to just tell you, if for some reason there is a connection for you this evening, if you do make your way up to the stage, just make sure when you are talking to Moriah and you're using the microphone, try to keep it up close to your face, or that way everybody here can hear you, and that would be appreciated. So before we start this evening, I want to welcome a very special friend of Moriah's. He's going to tell you a very special story. So if you guys would make a nice round of applause for Richard Ralston. Okay?
Thank you. Tonight I get a great honor to introduce you to a lady that actually saved my life. Sorry. I'm a single parent of 3 children, and in April of 1998 I lost my oldest son that was 17 to a drunk driver. 4 years later, in 1 month, I lost my 17-year-old daughter to a guy that crossed the center line. 3 years later, I had a friend call me and say, Richard, you need to talk to this lady called Moriah. She's coming to town and she talks to angels. Yeah, that's what I need. All that week, as I was working, I decided I'm going to go check this lady out. So that Saturday, I went to the Scottish Rite Temple in Cedar Rapids, and there was a big health seminar going on there. On one side was the people with the minerals and vitamins, which I do kind of take once in a while. On the other side were these people that I'd never seen before. These Reiki people, I didn't even know what that was. So I didn't even know what she looked like. So I walk in that side and I asked this lady, I said, do you know Moriah? She goes, yeah. I said, well, where is she? She's right over there behind that table. So as I look over there, there's this beautiful blonde lady talking to this other lady. And I was really confused because there was no candles on the table, there wasn't a dark room, there wasn't a crystal ball, and she didn't have a wart on her nose. So I did what every red-blooded American person would do. I stalked her. And since I'm a Marine, I'm really good at it. So for the next 3 hours, I watched this lady talk to people behind this table, outside on the steps, just everywhere. She's just talking. And I go, what is going on here? So finally, after 3 hours, I get enough courage to go up and I said, hi, my name is Richard. I'd like to talk to you. She said, great, where would you like to do it at? I don't know. Well, why don't we go outside and sit on the steps? Okay. I guarantee you I was not going to give this lady any information about me whatsoever. So as we were walking outside down the steps, she goes, you know what, why don't we go behind the building? I said, okay. And as we turned the corner to go around the building, she goes, well, I can tell you right now there are 2 young angels with us, a boy and a girl. This lump came to my throat right away, and tears came to my eyes. I didn't say a word. We walked behind the building, we sat down, she sat down right beside me, and I stared straight at her. And she's just looking straight ahead, going, And she goes, they're right here in front of us, and they're arguing back and forth on which one's going to talk first. And she goes, okay, the girl won, she's going to talk first. I didn't say a word. She wanted to tell you that she's very sorry she got in that car accident. As you do and as I do, we usually buy gifts for the people that we've lost. But we don't tell anybody what we did because it's very personal. That Christmas, I had bought her 3 Christmas angels from one of the party-like things I went to. Hope, peace, and love. I bought them for her, but I didn't tell anybody. And Moriah says she wants you to know that she really loves those angels you bought for her. And I'm staring right at her. I'm afraid to even look that way. And then when my son got to speak, Moriah keeps hollering, or keeps telling me, he keeps saying, "You're my dad, you're my dad, you're my dad." I never did tell Moriah that he was my stepson. And for the next hour, she told me things that nobody on this earth really knows. And when we were done, we walked around the building to the steps. She came inside, I went to my car, and I cried for an hour because I couldn't believe what happened to me. That week, I found out she was doing a book signing in Galena, Illinois at this Irish cottage, which I had never been to either. So I went there. I bought her book. I stood in line. And when it was my turn for her to sign it, and while she was signing it, I said, "I want to thank you for saving my life." So please, everybody rise and give a big warm welcome for the lady that saved my life, Moriah.
And I had no idea what Richard was going to say, so I'm a little verklempt here. So being a medium isn't always the easiest or most glamorous job on earth. I've been doing readings now since 1999, and I've spent more hours in people's basements than I care to admit. And sometimes doing readings, it's hard not to become attached to the person that you're talking to, because you feel so much compassion for them, you feel their loss, and you can feel their loved ones coming through you to give them love. And that is the real reason why I love being a medium. It's probably the best job you could ever have in the entire world, because where else can you meet with a complete stranger, and by the time 30 minutes have passed, you feel their loved one come through you, loving them, so you love them just as much. So to love a complete stranger is a miraculous thing, and it's something that I hope people learn to do. I do not believe that mediumship is a gift. I believe it's something that every single person in this room is born with, and it's something that is teachable. So when I do shows, I would absolutely positively love to talk to each and every one of you, but it's just not possible and I can't do it. But do know that you can do this yourself. This is something that you can learn. There's one trick to it. If you believe you can, and if you believe you can't, you are also correct. So whatever you feel with emotion and feeling becomes your reality. So if you think you can do this, you absolutely can. And if you think you can't, you're absolutely correct. So belief is something that you have to have to do this. But I'll explain a little bit about what I do and how it works, because some people haven't seen me before. And I will let you know how that works. So what happens when I sit with someone? If I said to you guys right now, can you see Barack Obama? Can you see George Bush? Can you see Jerry Ford? You can see them in your mind's eye. So if I said that, you can probably picture them. So that's what happens to me. It's like I'm having a memory of seeing something before. And sometimes, you know, they look like a vibrational light, but if I said, oh, there's a beautiful vibrational light, you guys would be thinking, who the heck is that? So usually they take form in a way that they would at their most healthy. And sometimes they might tell you their first name, last name, nickname, sound of their name. Sometimes they don't give a name. But when they speak in symbols, colors, smells, memories, it can be kind of comical. I did a reading one time and there was a young girl that had died and she had a giant bear over the top of her head. So of course I'm thinking the worst, and I finally said, does anybody know why I'm seeing this? And the lady laughed and said, sure, her last name was Bear. So if they can't say it, they might show it. And not only to get your own relatives, but you can get in-laws, people you grew up with, old neighbors. I don't know the lotto numbers, and I don't know what the stock market's going to do. And if I did, I'd be in Aruba right now. So do know that it has to have life for me to be able to communicate with it. So I don't know inanimate objects. And if I did, I'd go out and play the machines right now. I would. But you have to remember that there's no such thing as time on the other side. They all think they saw you yesterday. They all think they're going to see you tomorrow. So they forget there's a 60-year gap there and their stuff isn't where they left it. So that happens too. And your future always looks like a bowl of spaghetti. Whatever strand you take is whatever path you pick. So nothing is written in stone. You can change anything you don't like at any time. And just remember, when you see a medium, a psychic, or some other woo-woo, like myself, just because you do that for a living doesn't mean you're nice, kind, or spiritual. It means it's your job. So always trust your gut when you go to see someone. But other than that, when I do readings, sometimes I stare and I don't blink, and my sister said it's creepy. So don't be creeped out. I promise I won't froth at the mouth or roll on my back much. I may, if it strikes me. But usually when we start out, I'll randomly talk to someone on the other side, and then what I'll have you guys do tonight when you come up is pick the name out of the box, and we'll randomly talk to people in the audience, and we will go from there. So we'll just get started right away. Oh my goodness, there are quite a few people here tonight. There is a gentleman here that kind of looks like Danny DeVito of all strange things. I would say he's probably maybe 5'8", 5'9". He's a little more round in his stomach, but he's got a lot shorter legs. I can't imagine this man ever wore shorts one day in his life. Be aware of that. So I think he's a little bit more olivey complected. His hair is a little bit more blackish with more silver at the sides, but it's a little bit thinner on the top. It's more full around the sides. And he's got a little bit more full face. He's got a little bit more prominent nose, but I think he could talk to anyone. I'm pretty sure he could sell ice to an Eskimo. And I think he talked to everybody, whether that was a gas station attendant, someone at the grocery store, and as soon as he met them, they were his new best friend. And I would assume that there's probably maybe a daughter or a daughter-in-law here that he wants to talk to. And I think he was a wheeler and dealer till the day he crossed over. So he's got kind of a funny sense of humor, but I think he had a thing for the ladies too. So be aware. I would think he would find that pretty exciting. And I would think he would also like to be on stage. So be aware of that. But there's something with his name where I would think that there's consonants that follow each other. So like when you have like a repeating sound, and I think he's talking about his last name. So I would guess it's something that's pretty short, but it repeats. But he's looking for his daughter and he's stomping his foot. So anyway, I'm kind of blind up here. Does he belong to anybody, do we know? Well, and be aware, sometimes this happens. Now, in one of the shows, I described this old lady, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 times. And then finally at the end of the show, someone came up because they were afraid to come on stage. So if you're afraid to come on stage or you're not sure, that's okay. I'll do a few more seconds of describing him and then we'll move on to the boxes. But this fellow, I would think, yeah, I gotcha. I would think he wants to talk to his daughter because he's worried about her struggling financially. And he really wants to talk to her about that she didn't make bad choices in her relationships here on earth. And I don't know if he didn't approve of a spouse or husband or boyfriend, but he wants to apologize for that. And I think that he feels like he gave a lot of attention to other people, but maybe not so much to his family. So those are some of the things that he wants to talk about. Does that match anyone? Fine. What? Oh, we got one? A live one? Come on up. I'm guessing I'm looking at somebody. It's like when you pressed your eyes when you were little and you could see all those colors. So if I fall over, it's not my fault. Come on up. Hey. I think I just met you right before the show. Have a seat. Well, he has quite a few messages. And you can always take the mic out and hold it too. Okay, gotcha. I think he feels like sometimes he was great at talking, but he wasn't always very good at listening. And he feels like you've got a stubborn gene a mile long that won't quit. And he said that he's sick and tired of you saying that he's not showing up, he's not coming around, and why isn't he visiting you? He said he thinks you're deaf, blind, and dumb. And that, I'm sure he means that very lovingly. And if you have been feeling like something grazed the top of your head, like someone like giving you a noogie or slapping you on the top of your head, if you get that sensation and you're creeped out and there's nothing there, I would suppose that's him. And I think he doesn't know how to apologize. And not that you didn't have a great relationship with the other people in your life, but I think on some level he feels you understood him in a way that no one else understood him. And when everybody else was upset with him, you were still okay with him because you and he understood one another. And you know, like, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but this is what he did. And you know, like in those mafia movies, they do capiche? That's what he did to you. And so he gets choked up when he does that. So I don't know if that's a term of it. He wants you to know that he is okay. And he said to tell everybody here that if he made it, you're all just fine. So he's pretty comical. And like he just took his hand to his stomach and like bowed. So I think he's enjoying this quite a bit. But he wants you to know that you're not alone and that you do not owe him apologies. And he doesn't think that you've ever swindled, cheated him, or treated him with disrespect. And he feels like you have got to know, yes, I understand, that things happen. Sometimes we don't have control over it in our life, and we just have to roll with it. And so he wants you not to sweat the small stuff. He's not exactly okay with tattooed freaks, but he wants you to know if you fall in love with a tattooed freak, that's your own problem. And I'm sure that's lovingly said. So he wants you to know that you're just all right, and that he really loves you, but he thinks you're a terrible cook. And so he wants you to know if he could give you one suggestion, it would be go to a class. And he said then maybe you could have a rich husband. So good luck with that. But he said to tell you, all kidding aside, he's not upset. He loves you. He's just sick and tired of you whining at him all the time of where the hell is he when I'm right here, damn it. And I'm sure he means that nicely too. So I don't know if you want to add anything or say if something makes sense or doesn't make sense, or if you want to ask him anything, but he really won't stop talking. You're welcome. Do you want to say anything?
Does he know if I was there when he passed on?
I think he feels, she said, does he know that she was there when he passed on? And it seems like, in his recollection, one second he was here, the next he wasn't. So he doesn't remember his crossing because it seems extremely sudden or very quick. So it seems like one second he was in his body, the next second he was out. So I would think he's aware of the way things happened after he died, but he doesn't recall his death. You're welcome. And does that make sense to you? Did he look like Danny DeVito, kind of?
Yeah.
A big schnoz. Yeah,
And he talked all the time.
all the time. And did he like to say capiche?
He'd like to say all kinds of things.
Evidently, he still does. So you're stuck with him and you're taking him with you tonight, right? Because you know I got another show tomorrow night. You may have to concentrate. So I'd really appreciate it if you know, just take him home with you for a while. Okay, and I'm gonna make you pick a name out of the hat, or the basket, or whatever. I should be on Idol or something. Trust me, you don't want me to sing. You want your money back and then some. Did I say it right or did I mutilate it? Which is code for, nope, you didn't get it close. Alrighty, you can always grab a microphone or whatever you feel happy with. Well, you've got quite a gaggle of older ladies with you, oddly enough. There are 3 women standing side by side, which sometimes happens. Now, the first lady there, I would guesstimate that she is probably in her mid-70s. She's got a little bit more oval-shaped face. Her lips are a little more thin, but her nose is more narrow towards the top. But she's got a little bit more broad forehead, and she's got a lot of wrinkling by the sides of her eyes. And she smells like vanilla hand lotion and all crazy things. So sometimes spirits come over as a scent, because when, you know, like I remember my 3rd grade teacher's perfume, it always gives me a bad taste in my mouth, trust me. So she's coming over as like a vanilla hand lotion-y scent, but she absolutely loves you with all of her heart, and I think she's so excited to come forward, and I don't think she ever pushed her way to the front of the room one day in her life. I don't think that she was a very loud or talkative person, so this really is something exciting for her to be able to come forward. And I think that she's a little worried about you having a broken heart, because she feels like you carry the weight of so many people in the family with you. And she thinks that you worry about things sometimes for everybody else. And when you're worrying about everybody else, there's not time for yourself. And she doesn't want you ever to have a sense of shame where you don't hold your head up high or feel good about yourself. She wants you to be proud of yourself. And she wants me to tell you that you're not too old to go back to school if that's what you want to do. And that you're not too old to tell other people to mind their own business if that's what you want to do. She says that your life is a clean slate, and if you want to do something, that is completely up to you, but you're not bound or obligated to make other people happy. And she just feels like you've never had a sense of gratitude for being a caretaker to so many people. And she really wants you to know that that's why she loves you so much, because she thinks you have such a tender heart. And I think over the last 6 to 7 months, I think with so many things going on around you, she feels like you've kind of felt like you're on your own, or that you need to have that maternal support. And because you've had so much loss. She worries that you don't always feel that around you. And she's very insistent that day and night, if you need her, you're not bothering her, you're not bugging her, and you're not upsetting her. So she doesn't want to hear that. She just wants you to ask her for help, and she'll come right away. And I think that she worries that you get too cold, and she worries that you have cold hands and cold feet all the time. And she knows that mittens are not practical, but she wants you to have something on your hands because she doesn't like them getting stiff and cold. And she also says that she knows you don't like to mess up your hair, but she would wish that you'd at least try earmuffs. And she wants to talk about a zigzaggy Afghan quilt or blanket that somebody made by hand. And she thinks if you wrap yourself in that, that will be her embracing you. And that, yes, I gotcha. Okay. And that nobody has to see that on you. You can do that in privacy. And she says that it's not crazy talking to people who've died unless other people are around. So she thinks that if you talk to her in the mornings or in your living room when you're by yourself, nobody needs to know that but you two. And so she just wants to make sure you absolutely positively understand she's here. She hasn't gone anywhere. Yes, I gotcha. And she also wants to talk about, I don't know if it's one of those jewelry boxes that you open the doors and there's little hooks with hanging like necklaces and you pull the drawers for rings and things. But she wants to make sure that you take what you like and you wear what you like. And if you don't like something, that's okay. She understands that. But if you touch it and wear it, it's just like her putting her arm around you. And so if something gets bent or broken or like one of the pearls comes unglued, she says that's okay, because it happened to her too. So I think she feels that some of her jewelry was hobcobbled together a couple times. So if that happens, she says that's not the end of the world. But she just wants you to know that she's here and she can hear you. Yes. And I'm sure this is going to sound very exciting. And remember that sometimes their suggestions for us are not what we think are exciting. But you know how they have like Mount Rushmore, and then you can go to like the Mitchell Corn Palace and like Wall's Pharmacy, like those old roadside places. I don't know why she thinks that going to South Dakota would be a very exciting vacation. But she likes like the Black Hills, and she likes like Mount Rushmore and the Wild West kind of a feel. And so she wants to tell you not to be a stick in the mud, and that if you have the opportunity, you should just go. You might like it because it's not hot and humid, and she knows you don't like that. So she means well, really. But she just wants, and I should probably shut up myself, but she just wants to tell you that she's here and that she loves you with all her heart and that she can hear you. And I don't know if you want to ask her anything or if you want to ask her a question, but my goodness, she's got herself wrapped around you. And do you still have that zigzaggy blanket thing? Do you have that? Do you wrap yourself in it sometimes? On the quilt? Well, that would be rough. Take the whole rack with you. I guess you could use it as a footstool. She wants you to take it off, and she wants you to use it, and she wants you to know that when you do that, she'll be right by your side. Kind of cool, huh? So there you go. And I think we're going to pull another name out of the magical hat. Chad Firehome. I'm just kidding. Natalie Hoff. Do we have a Natalie Hoff? We do? Is she really alive? Okay. You know, that's a funny story about one of the last shows. I think something got lost in translation, and so somebody put a name of somebody who was deceased into the bucket. So when we called their name, the lady said, "Oh, I know who that is, but he's dead." And I'm such an idiot. I'm up here thinking, how did he get a pen? Well, that's just me. Have a seat. Well, we all know where I come from. Wisconsin. And, you know, I now live outside the cheddar curtain, but every now and then it slips out and I start talking like this, you know. And I think that's why I can't get my own TV show, because, you know, the Long Island medium, she's really good with long nails, but I am too Midwestern and Menards, and like, I walk up to someone and say, "You want to talk to your relative?" "Nope." "Okay." Wouldn't be much of a show. Oh my God, I'm crazy. Well, and you're thinking, why the heck did I get on stage with this woman? Well, my goodness. This sometimes happens also, besides people that have crossed over, as I like to refer to them, the living impaired. You've also got some pets with you, and that sometimes happens. And I think people are often surprised to find out not only do our loved ones cross over, but we can also have animals there, so be aware of that. But there's a gentleman that I think he feels he was too young to have died when he did. And I think he didn't have a lot of response time to know that something was wrong. And I would say he's probably 6 foot tall. His lungs, throat, and into his abdomen are lit up, which sometimes can be a symbol of how they cross, like if there was a disease or illness in that area. But he's a little bit more broad in his shoulders. He's got a little more like gray-blue colored eyes. His nose is a little bit more prominent, but he's got fairly thin lips, and he's got a little bit of fullness just under his chin. And so I think one second he was here, the next he wasn't. And I don't think he had the opportunity to let people know that he was going, and I don't think he knew that himself. So I think he was kind of surprised by that. But he's got quite a few messages for you, and I don't think he was very, a lot of times outspoken, or I don't think he was, would give people a hard time or anything of that nature. He's a little bit more quiet and reserved himself. And I think he's so proud of you for growing into being the person that you are today. And I think he doesn't think you have a unkind bone in your body. He thinks you're generous to a fault. And he feels like you've made a difference in other people's lives consistently throughout your life. And I think sometimes he worries that you always have a tendency to nitpick yourself or feel like you have to do things better. And he really feels like you've given so much of yourself already that that's pretty amazing in itself. And I don't know if sometimes you feel guilty about, you know, when you go clothes shopping or buying things for yourself like you don't think you need it, or you shouldn't waste the money on that. But I think he thinks you ended up with a tight pocket for yourself from his beliefs. And so I think on some level he's being kind of funny, but he's telling you that if you want to buy something, it's not the end of the world. And I don't know if you've wanted to have a backyard that kind of looks like Better Homes and Gardens, or you've been wanting to have something terraced with flowers and a patio. And it seems like it's probably fairly time consuming and pretty expensive. But I think he feels, I love it, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can start with one small corner, and then you can start with another small corner, and eventually he'll have the whole thing done. And he wants you to know that you have more time to do that than you think. And he feels that when you're outside by yourself and you don't have your cell phone and you're not bothered with people, and if you dig your hands, or if you're outside and you're not being pestered, he thinks that's where you find a sense of peace. And he promises to come to you to help you out when you need him. And the lady that's next to him, she's very dear. But I think she kind of has a very elegant manner about her. I don't think she would have left the house had she not looked nice. And I think she was a little more fussy with what other people may have thought about her when she was out and about, and I think she was more proud of her children and family than anything in the world, and I think that's the only thing that really mattered to her. And she's standing next to him, and she knows that he wants to talk, but I think she's going to cut him off. Primarily because she just wants to make sure before her time is up that she gets to tell you that she's here too, and that she loves you with all her heart. And I think that she feels, even though you're an adult, she still thinks of you as being a kid, where she wants to pull you towards her and make sure that you're okay. And I think she feels you and she still communicate. So sometimes when spirits think we talk to them, it's because we are thinking of them. So I would think that she's probably a generation older than you at least, because I don't think maybe she wore pants quite often, or I don't think that she maybe had a job outside the house kind of a thing. It seems like she would have preferred to be at home. And there's a lot of people there with them. And so there's quite a few people actually come forward there. But that first gentleman, he's just very insistent. He wants you to know that he's all right. But I think he feels in his mind's eye, he was too young to have died when he did. And I know he wants to stay here longer, but he couldn't. And I think he feels like in his death he abandoned people, which he certainly, there's nothing he could do about it. But I think he feels that obligation to let you know that. I don't know if he's last of the big spenders or what, but he thinks you should take $5 out there tonight. And he winked that you might get lucky, and why you only get $5, I don't know. Maybe try a penny machine. He's laughing that he'll try to give you his luck, which he said was none. And he winked at you there. So he's very dear, and so is she. And there are probably, good grief, 8 other people there besides them. But I don't know if you want to ask either one anything, or you want to ask anybody questions, or if you need clarification on something. But that gentleman, he's with you quite often. I would say almost every day he's checking in on you. Do you want to ask anybody anything?
The woman.
Mm-hmm. She said is the lady her grandma, and I would have to guess that since she's like at least a generation older, that would absolutely make sense, because I don't think many of us today like to wear, pantyhose and skirts. So I would think she's probably absolutely your grandma. And she's just sending you unconditional love, absolute unconditional love. But even though you're an adult, she doesn't see you that way. Which I guess, who looks at their children still and thinks of them as adults. Really, they're always your kid. So she's absolutely there, and she loves you with all her heart. And he's just a little more quiet, but I think he wasn't really in tune with his emotions or his feelings. It wasn't easy for him when he was here.
I think that the first person was someone who was also in high school who died.
Aw. She said that she thinks the first man was someone that she was close to in college. In high school.
And then he went to college.
He went to college and he died his freshman year of college. That's hard. So he's sending you absolute love. So he's still there with you all the time, which is a wonderful thing, because we don't die, we just change form, which is a great thing. So there you go.
Thank you.
So anyway, those are some things that can happen during readings. And sometimes, when people come in for readings, you have to really think about things that people have said, and then it dawns on you in a couple days. But there's some really neat things that can happen after readings too, especially when spirits like to tell you how they're going to come. Now sometimes spirits can take the form of an animal, they can take the form of a song, they can come via electricity. they can do really unusual things. And when my grandma died, I was absolutely heartbroken. And one day I was in Galena at the Piggly Wiggly feeling sorry for myself, sniveling up the aisle with my shopping cart. And this lady came down the aisle, and I looked at her, and she looked identical to my grandmother. So my eyes about bulged out of my head, and I'm running around the aisle 90 miles an hour to get back to this lady. I meet her in the next aisle, and I look at her, and she looked absolutely nothing like my grandmother. And I was just shocked, and I knew what I had seen, and I knew I saw my grandmother. But when I got to her, she didn't look like that at all. And so when we open ourselves up to the possibility that we can still communicate with our loved ones on the other side, that happens. And, you know, like, let's say you had Uncle Larry, and you're like, oh, Uncle Larry, would you let me know you're around? And you go out about your business, and during that day you meet 12 people named Larry. Well, that just might be a clue that Larry's trying to give you a kick in the head. So it doesn't always happen that we have trumpets and fanfare and a light and the chorus of angels. Sometimes it's when you bump your head on the roof of the car and you're having a really rotten time. And for me personally, my dad died on December 7th. It's almost been a year, and I've had a very hard time with it. And I have so much grief to this day, I still can't talk to my dad because it's too difficult for me. And so sometimes when we have a lot of grief, that grief pushes messages away from us. But my dad has been going through other people to get me messages, and when I get them, I get very emotional and I'm so excited. And, you know, my sister said to me yesterday on the phone, well, why isn't Dad coming to me? And she said, I cry every day and I miss him, and every time I think of him, I sob. I'm thinking, well, there's a good reason right there. So just remember, when you have a lot of grief, that energy is pretty dense, and it's hard for people to come through. And so, with that, there is probably my least favorite type of reading. There is a child here who is a little boy who I would think is trying to get to his family. And these are always pretty emotional, but they're also very healing. And I would think something happened to cross him over that was throughout his entire body. And I would say, thinking about my children and looking at him, I would guess he was probably maybe somewhere around 4 or 5. And I think that he's trying to let people know that he is absolutely okay. So I don't know if he belongs to anyone that's here. And if somebody does belong to you, just start walking up here or say, yep, that's me. But I would think when he crossed, I would think there were children that came after him that he watches now. So I know that he's aware of that, but I don't think his mom ever got over his crossing. And I think that he's trying to get to his siblings. So I don't know if one of his siblings is here this evening, but I think he thinks maybe his name, I don't know if it's his first or last name, had 4 letters in it. So just keep that in mind. Does anybody know who he goes to? No? Not yet? Or do we have a yes? I can't hear, I'm deaf too. No? Well, if that makes more sense later on, we can talk to him, because I know that he's looking for his parent. So, and I think a sibling. So he is here. And next to him is a lady that I would guess is maybe only in her 40s. I don't think she's particularly old, but the left side of her body is lit up, like her left hip pelvis up into her rib cage. And she has a hilarious sense of humor. She's got more auburn colored hair, but she's got either great big dimples or lines on the sides of her cheeks when she smiles. And I would bet she was probably maybe 5'5", 5'6" when she was here. And I think sometimes she'd be a little more full on top, so I don't know if she fluctuated in weight or she really liked push-up bras. But she's got a wonderful sense of humor, and I would think that she's pretty desperate to get to her family. And I think she liked to live life on the edge, and I think she had a hysterical sense of humor. But she's pretty insistent. She knows somebody in this room. She's not going till they talk to her. But I don't know if she was like in an injury or accident, because it's just the left side of her body that seems to be affected. So I don't know. I would think maybe something happened there to her. So she's got a funny sense of humor, but I do think that she liked going out and listening to bands. I think she liked to go out and party and listen to music, and so she is definitely trying to come forward. And there's something that she is saying. Yeah, there's two ladies in particular she'd like to come forward to. So, anybody know who she goes to? Going once? Yeah, you come on up. Keep going. No, just come on up. You can talk to her. No? And you can both come up and sit with me. I promise not to bite very hard. Maybe. It's kind of blinding up here, which is good. So I think that when she was here, she had a difficult time crossing, because I don't think she was ready to go. I don't think she wanted to go. And I don't think she wants people to suffer like they're suffering, because she feels that there's a hole that can't be filled. And I think that she feels like every time people look at her picture, it just makes things worse instead of better. And when there's songs on the radio that remind people of her, I think she feels like it's still so easy for people to fall apart. And she, I think, really does like people coming together with things that bond them together for her. And I know that she, yes, I gotcha. I don't know if she had an oval shaped like thumb-sized pendant, if that's something that is hers or went to you guys after she crossed. But there's something about like an oval-sized thumb-shaped pendant that she wants to talk about. And I think that she also feels like, yeah, I understand. I think that she feels like she can't have people blaming themselves for not being able to fix this or save her, or make things better. And I think that the more uncomfortable the emotions are to talk about, the more she tries to make light of it to make people happy. Because every time people get upset or really feel like they have a broken heart, I think she doesn't know what to do with that. Because I think anytime there was an awful situation or something was uncomfortable, she was the first to try to change that and try to change how people felt. So she's very dear, and she reminds me of somebody you'd want to have as a neighbor, somebody you'd want to have as a friend. And I think that she genuinely cared about everyone around her. And she just reminds me of like a ray of sunshine. I mean, she's very vibrant, she's very bouncy, and I don't think she wants anybody to be upset with her. So I'm not sure what happened when she crossed, but she doesn't want people to focus on her death. She wants people to focus on her life, and she thinks that's the most important part. And there's kids here on Earth that she's insistent that she is with every single day. And so I would guess that she wants to make sure people know that she's got things to do, or she's got an agenda. And I would say that she doesn't like being idle, and I don't think she likes to not have things to do. And the more chaotic and worked up and the more she can have on her schedule, I think the happier she is, even on the other side. So I wouldn't imagine she'd be sitting down anytime soon. So I don't know if you guys want to ask her anything, or if you have a question for her, but she's insistent she's coming through, and that's that. So she's pretty hard-headed about it too.
Is there anything she'd like me to tell her boys?
That is the easiest thing for her in the world, and she lights up like a Christmas tree. And I would guess that her children mean more to her than her own life did. And I don't think anything could ever come in the way of her and her kids. And that is absolute. And sometimes when spirits take form, they remind me of a vibration of light. And when they talk about love, it looks like cotton candy pink light, kind of in a mist or a fog that rolls off them. And her whole spirit fills with that cotton candy pink light, which is unconditional love. So when you talk about kids, that's what she talks about first. And I don't know if somebody made like a photo album book, like a book for her, but there's something with like photos and partial quotes or something that was said that's a big deal to her. And she wants to make sure people understand that. And I don't know if there's a book that needs to be finished, that's not done yet, but she's rolling her eyes because somebody's putzing around with it. And I think that she wants something finished, but it would remind me of like, what are those things called? Creative memories or scrapbooks. Thank you, that's the word. It would remind me of that, but I think it's not all the way done, but I would think that she wants it done. And I think it's something she wants like as a gift to multiple people. So I don't know if it's like something like Snapfish that you do online. That's a big deal. So it's something that's important to her. And I doubt anybody would ever forget her, but the reason she wants this is because she doesn't want to be forgotten. And she doesn't want to be forgotten that she's still in everybody's life every day, just like as if she was here. And so she's very insistent. She's got to show up and she can't help herself. And so she's just wanting, I think, you guys to have a sense of peace. She wants you to have a sense that she's okay and that she can hear you and that she would never abandon you. And I think she's been doing her best to get messages, but she's not sure they're sinking in. Again, because I think you guys have so much grief and so much heartache, it's really hard. Because when you're mourning and part of you has died, you don't know what to do with yourself. And I think that's why she's a little over the top trying to do cartwheels to say I'm right here. And I don't think normally like she would have ever been comfortable on the stage, but I would think that she's so desperate to let you know that she's okay. She's pushing her way through to make sure that you can get through, because I think there's some sort of guilt that lingers in your heart that if you have joy or if you have a sense of happiness, you're somehow dishonoring her. And she wants to make sure you know that's the furthest thing from her mind, because when you're full of peace and you have happiness, so does she. But when your grief is overwhelming, she's right by your side trying to put herself around you to tell you to stop, because she doesn't know how to fix it. And so I think until she died, she didn't really understand what a bright light she was in people's lives. And I think she was humbled by what people told you about her. And I don't think she thinks you guys had heard stories like that before, and I don't think she'd heard them about herself. And so she wants to tell you thank you. Because she doesn't think she would be who she is without the way the two of you loved her. So be aware. She said to tell you she loves you. And she loves you more. And she said to tell you to the moon and back. Okay? I'm gonna make one of you pick out a victim. He is the little boy. Okay, we're gonna wait on that, and I'll put in my happy pocket. Come on up. Come on up. And you can come this way. And sometimes when there's children involved, it's very difficult to come up here. So I understand how you might not want to. Have a seat. I think he feels very badly for crossing over. And sometimes what happens when spirits cross, they, that is kind of moving there, isn't it? Yeah. I didn't touch it. They feel a sense of guilt because they feel like they're in Hawaii at a luau and a beach party, and we're all in Siberia making big rocks into little rocks. So they have a sense of guilt because they're having the time of their life and they're okay, but then they see our heartache and then they feel badly that they're still not here with us, and they know they can't do anything, and they know that we're going to be okay, but they're still desperate to come to us. And I don't know if he was kind of a stinker sometimes, or just into things, or just had his own way of doing things. But I would guess that he still comes via electronics. So if you have televisions that turn on and off randomly, or the radio comes on, or you have like a remote control car that just turns on at strange moments, I would suppose that's his sense of humor because he doesn't know what else to do. And I would think besides yourself, there's 4 other people he's trying to get to say that he's okay. And and I don't know why he wants to tease you, but he does. And I don't know if you're really clumsy sometimes and you trip on dry pavement, but he worries about you like banging your foot into the post of a bed, knocking your head like on a door frame. And I think he doesn't know sometimes why you get so frustrated when you do things like that. But I would think that he's around you so much that if you see a shadow dart, probably 4 foot tall, 2 foot wide, that looks like it's a grayish black color, that darts out in front of you when you're walking, that's his spirit. And he's not trying to creep you out or make you upset. He just wants you to see him so that you know that he can still run faster than you. And I think, yep, I got it. Okay. I think for some reason he feels like you're still 12 years old inside. And I don't know if you still like to do fun things, but he thinks that you need to do more fun things because he thinks you turn into an old man. And I think he feels like you've had to balance too much. And he knows that it's hard, but he wants you to know that he wants you to enjoy yourself again. And he doesn't want you to feel guilty. He doesn't want you to feel badly. And he wants you to know that you're really, really smart. And he wants to make sure you know that. I gotcha. And I feel like I'm in a neighborhood that has like a cul-de-sac attached to it. And remember those split level houses like from the 60s and 70s where they kind of look similar, and it's like a suburban neighborhood. I feel like there's something that he's talking about where he likes to visit, and it's something important for him to say. Yes, I gotcha. And he wants the other 4 people to know that he's still here, and he doesn't know how to get their attention, but he thinks he's already been to you about 6 times in dream state, so he wants you to know that that's really him that comes to you. And if you ever feel like your bed sheets are being pulled off your bed, or you feel like your feet are being uncovered, and you swear you just covered them and you roll over and it happens again, I think he's doing it with intent. And there's no apology for it, by the way. So I would think he's still got that kind of funny sense of humor. But he doesn't want you to forget that it's fun to ride a bike. And I don't know if you've thought about buying like a mountain bike and going on paths or doing like biking, adult biking he's talking about. But he thinks that if you do that, he'll come to you. And he likes to sometimes send you a fox. So, if you ever get a fox that peeks out at you or runs across your path several times a day or is in your yard and won't leave you alone, he wants you to know that's him. And there's something funny to him about the imagery of being sly like a fox. So just be aware. He's around, but I think he doesn't want you to have heaviness or he doesn't want you to have upset. Do you want to ask him anything? The question he asked was, what happened that day? And it seems like on the, sly like a fox, remember that. It seems like I have a burning sensation on the right side of my chest, and it tapers down into my lung. And I have a severe allergy to walnuts. And if I ever eat walnuts, I go into anaphylactic shock. And whatever he's letting me feel feels very similar to that, where you get very lightheaded and you feel like you're woozy and you get like a burning sensation. And then I just feel like I can't see and I can't hear because my ears are buzzing, and then he's on the other side. So, I don't know if there was something where he went into like a sense of shock, or something happened where he started to lose his hearing, his seeing, and his ability to breathe. But 3 nice ladies came to get him, and they told him it was going to be okay. And he knew one was his great-grandma, so he went with her, and she told him it was going to be all right. And he knew it was going to be okay because she promised him that he could still talk and he could still visit and he could still stay. But I think whatever happened to him, I think he had left his body by the time somebody tried to revive him or tried to help him. And I think that he feels like he was upset at first because he thought he was going to get in trouble. So I don't know if he was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. And now he knows that he wouldn't be in trouble, but at the time he had that feeling we all have as kids, like, oh crap. So I think he feels like he did something he wasn't supposed to. Did you want to ask him anything else? He says that he still loves you with all his heart, and he's never ever stopped. And you can call him anytime he wants. And is there a Brian or Ryan too he's trying to talk to? That's a boy, that's a man now. He's saying something with the name of like Brian or Ryan, so keep that aware. But I think when he died he was a boy, but he's probably now older. And he wants to make sure you know he's okay, and he wants you to be okay. And he's so funny because he's really worried that unless you start wearing like baseball hats, you're still going to hurt your head all the time. And there's something about the visor giving you an idea of how tall the door frame is before you hit it. And I don't know why it's always the top of your head, but he's really worried you're going to knock yourself out sometime. So he gets to laughing about that. So be aware. He's with you every day. Every day. And he loves you as much as you love him. He said even more. So he's all right. Okay? All right. I've got somebody in my pocket. Gina Edge, you're in my pocket. Come on down. She's like, nope. And if you don't want to come up, you can give it to the next victim sitting next to you or someone else. I feel like we need Jeopardy music or something when people come up. Striptease music, maybe. Get a pole up here. My mother-in-law would use it though. that out loud. She brought her purse up because she doesn't trust you people sitting next to her. I wouldn't either. See, it's you never trust a sister. She does trust her sister. She doesn't. I'm just teasing. She said she doesn't. But anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch. Well, there are quite a few people here for you. And there is a very insistent lady that I think had a very hard time crossing over because I think she was in her body then out of her body. And sometimes medication can cause that feeling. Sometimes when people are going through the dying process, they can be in and out of their body. So I think that she could probably hear people, but I don't think she could answer anybody for a while. And I don't think she really wanted to die in front of anybody. And so I don't know if everybody wasn't able to be there with her, but she wants your sister to come up here too, because she says she's not going to talk to you by yourself. So your poor sister is getting drug up on stage too. And I don't know if you guys were yelling at her that she better come or she should show up, but she said that she likes to keep her appointments. So I think she wants to talk to the both of you. And, okay. She says that she finds this very funny because nobody ever cried about her like this when she was here, and she winked about that. And there's something where she doesn't want you two to complain about having to have family portraits taken, where you get everybody's kids together and everybody's families together, and you go outside and have your picture taken. And I don't know which one of you it is that always says you can't take your picture because you look fat or you look ugly. But she doesn't want to hear it anymore, and she said that's why there's no pictures of her. So she feels like you have to break the cycle and let a picture be taken. And, good grief. I don't know if there's also 2 other people that she wants to talk to, but they're not here with you two tonight. But she feels like she's got to get messages to everybody, and she's very insistent she loves everybody equally. She loves everybody the same, and she doesn't want anybody to feel left out. And I think that she also feels like she loves you both with all her heart. She doesn't know how to express that more than she has been. Okay. She wants to make sure that you understand that when you die, you don't turn into nothingness, and that you just don't disappear or go away, that you can come and go as you please. You can be with everybody you love. And she feels like you need to know that she's still here and that she very much wants to be a part of day-to-day living, and she likes it when people talk to her. And she still wants to be in on conversations. And something that really bothers her is, oh, I see, past tense. She doesn't like was. She doesn't like she was. She wants people to say she is, and she doesn't want people to say she would have liked this. She wants people to say she does like this. So she doesn't want to be talked about in the past tense because she really wants to make sure that you guys know that she's still here. And there's a very funny gentleman over there that just keeps shaking his head because he keeps laughing. She's going to talk all damn night. And I think he means well, but he's got like his fingers tapping and his foot's going because he wants to get his 2 cents in. She just pretends she can't even see or hear him. Well, he's a little bit, I would say he's probably in his 70s, somewhere around there, and he's a little bit more quiet, and I don't think he was very, grouchy or anything like that, but I think he liked to get his zingers in sometimes. And I think he feels like when he died, like holidays aren't the same, or parties aren't the same, or his storytelling's not the same. And I don't know why he wants people to remember that he was always an angel and that he was always good and never did anything wrong. But he really cracks himself up with that statement.
So my mom and dad passed away in a motorcycle accident together.
And I would say that they're still together. and that he's still calling the shots there because she just keeps talking over the top of him. But he really wants to make sure that you guys know he hasn't lost his sense of humor. And I think he feels like, okay, I understand. I don't know if there was another person that had to help with the estate and help with the books and everything that had to be gone through, but he wants to apologize to both of you for leaving a mess. And it made sense to him at the time, but he understands it didn't always make sense to other people here. And she, yes, I gotcha. She wants to make sure that you can both hear her just fine. Yes. Is there, is that a brother or was that the?
Our parents.
Who's the boy that had to help with all the books and all the?
Brother out there.
Okay.
Our brother Jason is here.
Yeah, but he doesn't want to come up here, your dad said, because he thinks this is BS. And so,
They were married for 20-some years.
well, your dad's being mean about your brother because he says he doesn't want the top of his head to be shown either or something, and he's making a crack there. Yeah. Well, he's making fun of him. And then, you know when your mom says that she loves everybody equally? Well, then your dad says, well, we all know who her favorite was, and then he points to your brother, and then she says, no, that's not true, I love everybody the same. So I know that they're teasing back and forth. So be aware. I think he doesn't want you guys to feel like you have to fight so hard, or you have to do what you think they would want you to do all the time, or that you always have to be right about things. You have to do what your heart says and what your heart makes you happy, not about what they would want for you to do, because sometimes he thinks that interferes with your day-to-day living, and he wants you to know he's proud of all of you no matter what, and nothing you can do can ever change that. So you have to start living for yourself and what you guys want, and not what they want you to do or what you think they would want you to do. He wants to be very sure you understand that. Oh gosh, you're gonna love me. It's not my fault if it happens, by the way. I think your mom thinks there's gonna be another baby in the family, probably coming up, I would say, within the next 14 months, so be aware, don't get drunk. At least that's how it happens to me. What am I doing after the show? I don't know. That would be funny. Not. So anyway, they're both thinking this is funny, so if there is a surprise pregnancy, it's not my fault. That's all I'm saying. So be aware, they think that this is something that's coming up. And I'm looking at something that is not a headstone, but it's something that feels like I'm looking at a park, or I'm looking at like a backyard setting that's very park-like, but there's something that's etched, and I think it's got pictures or something on it, and it's something she's trying to say that she thinks is just beautiful, or it's something that she absolutely loves, and she wants to make sure you guys know that. And I don't know if it's like what are those paving stone things you get for like a yard or a garden, but it's something that she's very fond of. And
I actually just ordered their monument.
okay. Does it have their picture on it though?
Their
Because
name.
this is something that has her picture and his picture with it, so keep that in your mind's eye. But they're both absolutely positively here, and I think, I don't know if there was something with like illegal scales of justice that happened after they crossed, or something that you had to do, but they both want to say that they feel so badly about that, because whatever it was, it must have been pretty horrendous and just sucked the energy out of you day after day. So
No, they're okay.
they're absolutely positively A-okay, and they're sending you nothing but unconditional love. But yeah, Is there something you guys are going to be doing at a parade or something that you guys are going to have for them this next year over the summer for them as a memorial that has to do with a parade?
Harley, maybe like a memorial ride.
Well, if something comes up around June or July, that has to do with being a memorial with them, with some guy who your dad says looks like a bear, keep that. There you go.
He has a friend named Sugar Bear.
Sugar Bear. Okay. Do whatever Sugar Bear says. So if something comes up with a parade around June or July that has to do with them and has to do with them together, they're both asking you to do that.
There'll probably be a memorial ride.
Okay, so they were on a ride when they...
No, not
They were like heading home from
Okay. So if that memorial ride comes up, and if that man that looks like a bear, has the bear with him, gives you the thumbs up, then go with what he's got planned. They both want you to know that, because it's something amazing, and I would take lots of pictures, and sometimes orbs in pictures can be moisture, sometimes they can be insects, it can be dust, particulates, and sometimes orbs can be spirits. But if you take pictures and there's this parade and you find 2 white orbs, that'll be them in that picture to prove that they're there. So be aware of that. Okie doke. All right. All right. So sometimes you have to think, let's say all of you cross over tomorrow, you guys are no longer here, how on earth are you going to connect with the people that you love? What are you going to do to get their attention? What are you going to do to say to them? Or how do you plan to get to the people that you love the most? So sometimes, like I suggest with families, like if you say, okay, you know, I'll come to you as an apple. Well, that's a pretty easy symbol because apples can be red or green. They have a specific shape, they have a crisp texture, they have a taste, they have a smell. It's something easy that you know how to communicate with your loved one. And when my grandma crossed over, before she died, she promised me that if I ever got in a bind, that she would lay a white feather at the bottom of my feet. And one day I was having the world's worst day, and I tripped up the steps, and out of nowhere was a white feather across the top of my feet. So I knew that she was absolutely with me. So if you ask them to come to you, they absolutely, positively will. It is just not always in our time or the way that we expect it. And since there's not really a sense of time on the other side, if we say, you know what, you better come to me next Thursday at 2. And next Thursday at 2 happens, and then you're like, oh, they don't love me. Well, then 3 weeks later, next Thursday at 2, it could happen. But you have to be a little more vague about time, because time is kind of a weird thing on the other side, so be aware of that. But there's a lot of ways you can communicate with them. You can talk to them through a pendulum. You can ask them to come to you in dream state. There are guided meditations that you can use. There's lots of different ways that you can have your loved ones still connect with you. So be aware, it may not be in the way that you want. It may be that it comes through someone else, and that just happens. So be aware of that. There is a pretty funny fellow here that I want to say was maybe about 5'7" or 5'8" when he was here, and I think he wore like those Zanzibar pants with like the clasps in the front over the top of his belly button. And I think even though he was a little more curvy, I think he tucked his shirt in all the time. And it seems like, remember those shirts guys used to wear that you could stick like pocket protectors in? He would have had that kind of a shirt, but he's got like those black Colonel Sanders kind of glasses on. And I want to say he was kind of a busy guy where he was always going about doing his thing, and I think like he had a hard time sitting still sometimes. So I don't know if he owned his own business or ran his own business, but I would think that it's being carried on somehow, and that's something that he wants to talk about. But I would guess he's been gone for a little bit of time, and I don't know why he thinks his wife and sister were magpies, but he gets to chuckling about having putting up with a house full of gossiping women his whole life. So I think he thinks that's pretty funny, but I don't imagine his wife would find it amusing. But I think he had a nickname that was something people called him that was not his real name. And yeah, I want to think that he worked pretty hard his whole life, and I don't think he even retired when he was supposed to. And I think he was kind of a micromanager because he wouldn't let people do the things the way they wanted to do it. He wanted to do it his way still. So he's very nice, he's just very insistent, but I mean, he really looks like he's walking out of like a 1980s Sears catalog. So I think he's been gone for a while, but I think he wants to bark at a young man that's here tonight. So I don't know if that's his son or grandson, but he's looking for a gentleman, and then I would think there's a lady that he wants to talk to also. So if anybody knows who he goes to, he'd like to micromanage your life, please run up and he'll tell you what to do. So anyway, does anybody know who he goes to? Any takers?
Any other clues?
What's that?
Any other clues?
Well, I think he could be kind of antsy sometimes, and I think he really had a thing for like going to like Big Boys or Denny's or hole-in-the-wall breakfast joints too, which I don't think he feels people do anymore, and sit with a newspaper. And I think like he'd listen to conversations and then butt in on them, but I think that was just his nature. So that's something he wants to talk about. And I don't know if he had storage facilities or garages or like something where he stored things that he wants to talk about that I think probably got sold. But that's something else he wants to talk about too. Yes. And he wants to talk about a flagpole. So I'm not sure if he was, yep. Come on up. Bob, come on up. I'm just teasing. Well, that microphone just does not want to stay up tonight. Well, I think that he feels that sometimes people thought he just knew everything, but I think he was really worried about things, and I think that he feels regret for not letting people have their own ideas or not letting people do what they wanted, and now he feels that he's left this legacy of people always questioning themselves. He feels like he never meant to be, in his words, an SOB. He never meant to be cheap, and I don't think he ever wanted anybody to feel like they weren't doing good enough. And he's not sure how to exactly apologize, because I don't think that was something he often did. But he's trying to say that he's sorry from the bottom of his heart, because he's really not upset with the way things happened after he died, but he didn't want anybody to be pitted against one another. He didn't want anybody to fight. He didn't want there to be arguing. And I think he feels like he's got to fix this, and he wants people to come back together. And I don't know why it would be really difficult to get sides of a family to come back together and be kind to one another, but I think he's trying to guilt you into doing this job. And I don't know why it's your job to pull people back together, so I don't know if you invite two sides over for a dinner and don't tell the two sides the other ones are coming. But he feels like being sneaky isn't always bad. and he just slapped you on the back, and he like tries to shake you to get you to lighten up. And I think that he also feels like he doesn't want there to be upset anymore. He wants everything to be smoothed over. And he wants to take responsibility and say he thinks this is his fault. And I don't think he intended for anything to be a mess. He wanted everybody to be taken care of. And I think that he realizes that there's more to working in life than working, and that you need to spend time with your kids, that you gotta have vacations, and you gotta have family. Because he feels like if you work yourself to the bone your whole life and that's all you do, you end up with memories of nothing but working and not enjoying yourself. And he feels like you gotta worship your family and not the dollar bill. And he doesn't know how to make this better. And he wants you to know that he thinks you are an absolute sweetheart. And he wants you to know you still have the prettiest blue eyes. And he wants you to know he gets very choked up, and what's interesting is he's got a handkerchief with him rather than a Kleenex. And I don't think he would ever want anybody to know that he's upset or that he's crying. But he wants you to know that he loves you. And he just hopes you can do this. And he said that he'll do his best to help. Oh my God. And if you get everybody together and the power goes out, that's him. And he hopes people scream and get upset, because he thinks it would be kind of funny. So be aware, he's got a little bit of the devil in him there, where he thinks that'd be funny. But he wants you to know that it's okay, and that he's okay. Yes, I understand. And I don't know who the oldest boy is, but he wants you to tell him he's doing a good job, and he's proud of him. And he wants to make that clear. Yes. And he's not angry with anybody. He's not upset. And I don't know what to do with this flagpole. So I don't know if he was in the service at one point or he's just very patriotic. But he wants to make sure that people understand that flagpoles are meant to have flags on them. They're not meant to be lightning rods. And that it doesn't cost very much to go down to the hardware store and get one. So be aware. He thinks that's something necessary too. So he said, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I just had to get that off my chest. Like everybody's upset with him. But he wants you to know he's okay. Do you want to ask him anything?
Well, my dad was diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of the year. And I'm just wondering if he has any advice for us.
Well, I think he feels like you guys have to have absolute faith, and he wants you to know that he's doing his absolute best. And he feels like he never thought he could make miracles, but he, and I quote, is sure as hell trying. So he wants you to have faith, and he wants you to believe, and he wants you to know if you all come together and have that same faith and same belief, it'll work. And he stomped his foot. So I wouldn't argue with him. So I would think he's pretty stubborn about that himself. But he wants to make sure you know that he loves you. Okay. What did they call him sometimes, do you know?
They called him Chief.
Chief. Well, that makes absolute sense. That's about as micromanager as you can get. So be aware, Chief is here with you. He absolutely loves you, and you gotta tell the other ones it's okay. Alrighty? Okay? Alright, so great things like that happen. A lot of times working in this line of work, you know, it's so difficult dealing with heartache, and sometimes when spirits cross, a lot of times, you know, we have problems here on earth. A lot of us suffer from mental illness. Some of us may have Down syndrome. Some of us may be paralyzed or have debilitating diseases. But when we cross over, we don't suffer from that anymore. And a lot of times, I'm probably one of the only mediums that doesn't believe in the devil or demons or evil. And I think that what I've heard from spirits really supports that, because they say when we cross, we feel every wonderful thing we've ever done to someone, and we feel that through their eyes. And then we feel every rotten, awful, crappy thing we ever did to someone, and we become them. So imagine if you were, Adolf Hitler, having to feel the pain that you ever caused someone else, and like a ripple effect, how that affected everyone around them. I would think that would certainly be worse than any idea of hell. So from my experience, hell, devils, demons, it doesn't exist. And because I don't believe in it, it's not true for me. But if somebody else believes in that, that's certainly true for them. But the wonderful thing about crossing over is that people have the ability to apologize for things they did wrong when they were here. They can look at themselves and reflect things they wish they would have said, things they wish they would have done in a beautiful way that maybe their personality couldn't do when they were here. So that's one gift that they give us. And if you ever have a feeling of upset or heartache about something you said to someone who's crossed over, maybe you had an argument with them, maybe you were very angry with them, you can always talk to their higher self and ask for apologies for yourself, and you can wait for them to apologize for you. Now, one time I did a reading, and this gentleman came forward and told his wife that she could have any dog she wanted, and that he was so sorry. And she started to sob, because they had had an argument about buying their son a dog, and they were fighting, and he threw the phone down on the floor when he was driving and ended up getting in a head-on collision and was killed after that. So just be aware, sometimes we don't have deaths that are easy. We don't have deaths that we can answer. And I think one of the hardest things to do when you're grieving is you can't ask how and you can't ask why. And once you stop asking how, and once you stop asking why, and just accept it for what it is, you can move through it and they can come to you. And I think because as humans we want to know why. Are we being punished? Did I do something wrong? Why did this happen to me? If you stop asking that, you can communicate with your loved ones fairly easily. So that's one tip I have if you really want to talk to your loved ones. And the other thing is, you have to forgive yourself for whatever you think you've said or done. And when you forgive yourself, you can move on and have beautiful conversations with the people that you love. And you can even forgive people that have hurt you on the other side just by simply telling them so. So that's something wonderful that you have power to control your life right now. So a lot of times people have a million questions for me about how this works, or if they had an experience, or what was going on, or you want to ask. So if you have questions, about strange things that have happened in your house, or how you can talk to people that have crossed over, if you have any strange paranormal questions, we're going to put 2 mics up at the front, and we're going to pretend you're on the old Oprah show, and you guys can swagger down and ask questions. But does anybody have a question about something strange or some kind of experience that you've had that you can't put your finger on? Or does anybody have any questions? Come on up to the rock star mic.
I find pennies and dimes and sometimes, when I'm doing something, it's like, or if I help somebody,
Right.
I'll find a penny.
Right. Pennies and dimes, absolutely. And if any of you are my Facebook friends, a couple weeks ago I posted a really neat story that was written about how you get spiritual pennies or dimes or coins. And I found in my experience that spirits all love to leave us messages. And you know, my dad was so funny. Before he died, he said, well, when I die, I'll leave you $100 bills. And then he laughed and said, don't hold your breath. And I'm still holding my breath, so I haven't found those yet. But yes, spirits, when they want to get us our attention, can leave us dimes, pennies, nickels. I have a client who her grandfather told her that he was going to leave her pennies. She and her mother were in their kitchen talking about something stupid the grandfather did, and in the middle of the kitchen, a penny dropped off the ceiling and hit her in the head. And they were both absolutely creeped out and ran outside. And then when that happened, they both started laughing so hard they couldn't control themselves, but they were complaining about him being like a pack rat or something, and the penny beamed her in the head. So be aware, they can absolutely do that, and those are lovely spiritual messages. Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions.
Two
First of
questions.
all, about your book,
Yep.
is it at BAM's or do you have?
My book, How to Be a Happy Medium, retails for $14.95, and people are selling online for $500. Don't buy it. My friend Josh Carney and I are putting it together right now to go through Amazon, iTunes, Android, and we got it kicked back from Apple at the moment, but we're going to move forward with it and get it up, and hopefully it'll be up before the first of the year.
Are you going to have it in stores or just online?
I've been having a lot of requests for physical copies because I forget that everybody still likes physical books.
Yeah.
So I think I might actually get them printed, and then they will be available on Amazon.com.
Okay, for the book itself?
Yep, for the physical book.
Yeah.
Right.
And then also, you know, I've lived in my house that I live in for, I think, I don't know, 9, 10 years. But, you know, I always had this sense, you know, I had strange things happen.
Uh-huh.
You know, like my brother-in-law had to turn off the water downstairs to the bathtub because twice the water was turned on full blast. And I had a leak in my downstairs, in my bedroom, and the water was turned on to overflow.
Right.
Twice. And he said, oh, it just could be the washers. And well, my kids always felt that there was somebody there in the house.
And how old is your house? Just a guess.
My sister owns it in the 1800s.
Okay.
But my house is originally the maids and butlers quarters to the house that, the big house that was connected to.
Okay.
Well, my daughter, who's 17 now, but she was, I think, 9 or 11 when we moved in there, she said, well, some Walter keeps coming out of the closet and telling me bad stuff to do. And anyways, but this doesn't happen now.
Right.
Then their friends would come down the stairs, and they'd run down the stairs, and I'm like, why are you running down the stairs? Oh, because it feels like somebody's pushing down the stairs all the time.
Okay.
But I don't know, and then the TV will turn on and off sometimes.
And sometimes what can happen, if places are very old, and especially in the time era where people believed in hell and damnation, a lot of times if people, for example, have Alzheimer's disease and cross over, sometimes they can be confused for a period of time of where they belong. And that doesn't always happen, but that's something that can happen, so they get to be a little confused. And sometimes people in your house don't necessarily belong to you. You can always ask them to go, you can always get rid of them. But it's always interesting to find the history of your house, because in my house, for example, my brother-in-law doesn't believe in this kind of thing. He saw a giant black dog barrel into him down in our hall. My kids have all seen it. Everybody's seen this giant black dog. And I went to a doctor's office here in Dubuque, and the secretary said to me, oh, I know that house where you live. We used to get dogs there when we were little. And I said, really? What kind of dogs? She said, giant black poodles. Oh, it's still there. So, a lot of times when things like that happen, it can be somebody that's literally in the house, and you can have a conversation with them and say, you know what, I really appreciate that you are here. I understand that, but you have got to go. You have got to cross over. You got to go find your family. And if you don't want to, that's okay, I get that, but go somewhere else. You're not welcome here anymore. And you just ask them nicely to leave. And generally, that will work. So I would suppose whoever they were seeing was probably attached to the house at some point. So if you go to the Historical Society, sometimes on the titles, sometimes on the deeds, it'll list people's names, or if you find some elderly neighbors that maybe knew the history of that house, well, that's a long time ago, but
Yeah,
you might find those stories.
yeah, it's just a joke now, if something happens.
Yeah.
Walter's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
You just
not
tell Walter
scary.
to buzz off.
Yeah, it's not a scary thing, but you just.
Well, and sometimes people get scared about things. I had a client in Chicago who had called a Catholic priest in because she thought her house needed to be exorcised. And she was very upset on the phone, and she was very concerned because she lived there with her daughter. And before I knew any of this, I said to her, well, there's a gentleman in your house, and he was talking that he's really proud to be there because he prevented 2 burglaries. And she's like, that's really weird because 2 people tried to break in my house. And then she said, and then the guy said, and I really liked that the priest came because I walked behind him and said my prayers with him and did the sign of the cross. And the poor guy originally owned the house, had no idea that that was to get rid of him. Well, he knew that she was a nice lady, had a nice daughter, and didn't have a husband, and he wanted to make sure that they were okay. So he had no idea at all that they were trying to get rid of him. He thought it was really nice and was like, yes, and blah, 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 following him around. So sometimes they don't realize you're talking about them or that they're freaking you out.
Oh, okay.
So just be nice to them and say, Walter, I really appreciate the fun, but beat it. You bet. Yeah, hi.
Hi, I had 2 different dreams.
Mm-hmm.
One was about 2 people that were still alive, but it was like I was right there as they were talking. And it
Oh,
was
neat.
a situation that I couldn't understand because these people were alive.
Right.
But it was a very serious one where one young man didn't want to leave.
Okay. What can happen sometimes, there's a couple different theories about that. One is called astral projection, and that's a belief when we're in a half awake, half asleep state that we can project our consciousness somewhere where people are alive and actually witness things. And there are whole classes out in California where you can go learn to astral project if you want to. And then the other thing that even the Catholic Church talks about is called bilocation. And that's where your spirit can be in 2 different places at the same time. Now, St. Anthony of Padua was in church giving a service. Forgot he was supposed to be across town giving a service. Everybody in the first church saw him kneel down and say prayers. In the second church service across town, he showed up, gave a sermon, and left. And at that moment, in the first church, everybody saw him stand up and finish the rest of the service. So that's called bilocation. So you could have been having a very vivid, lucid dream. And the third thing that can be is called precognition. And that is when we have a bowl of spaghetti as our future, and there's millions of strands, but you can have a psychic or precognitive moment where you go to that time in the future and you witness things the way that they happen, and then you have a very weird sense of deja vu. So it's nothing unusual, you're not crazy. That's something that really can happen to people, and I'm sure a lot of you have had that experience where you feel like you're flipping out of the bed, or you feel like someone's sitting on your chest and you can't sit up. That's when you're out of your body. So that can happen.
Okay, in the second dream, it's like I knew the person that was there, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I felt him patting my hand, but I could not get around to see his face.
Get to see who it was. And when
I
you
knew who it was, though.
Yes,
From the
and that's the thing. When you're in that state, you don't have to see their face, you don't have to see their eyes, you know who it is. And that is also part of being out of your body, so that can happen. That makes sense too.
Is that them trying to get a message to you that they are there too? Or?
Absolutely, positively. And those are wonderful things. Go ahead.
I have 3 very young children, 3 under 3, and my mother just recently passed away.
I'm sorry.
And a lot of times my daughter will be in the car driving and she'll say, Mommy, I want to hear the heaven song.
Aw.
And I have no concept of what she's talking about. She wasn't at she was at the funeral, but she's only 2.5.
Right.
So how would I know what she's talking? Do I continue to ask
When
questions?
they're still little, like I have a 2.5-year-old too, and they're still kind of crazy at that age. But you can say to her, what does that heaven sound like? And you can say, you know, like if she has a favorite TV show, does it sound like that song? No. What does it sound like? Does it sound like a lullaby? Question her in a term that she can understand what the heaven song is. And you can say to her, did she call your mom grandma or?
Yep.
Grandma. Okay, you can say, when she asks you about the heaven song, say, do you see grandma? Did grandma tell you to ask me that? And then she'll probably start talking, because at that age, they don't know that that's weird and they're not supposed to.
Exactly.
So I would just question her and say, is grandma here with us right now? And say, what does grandma say? And just ask her and see what she says, and she'll answer you. But to get her to answer what the heaven song is may be a little more difficult, because sometimes when people are crossing, they hear something that sounds like chimes, bells, or sounds very harp-like, but it's almost like voices and music as one. So when they're that little, they can still remember that themselves. So I would just ask her what it sounds like. Like, is her favorite show is like Sophia the First? Say, does it sound like that music? And then maybe get classical music and say, does it sound like this?
It's something on the radio, because she'll ask me to turn it on all the time.
Okay.
And then I'll say, well, what song is it? The heaven song, grandma's song.
Well,
and I have no idea what she's speaking of, but she never saw the video we made of my mom. But then my father and I were watching it one day, just on a random afternoon, and she'd never seen my mom young, and said, "Oh, look, it's grandma.
Aww.
It's grandma." But it was all pictures of her
what's
when she
the
was
song
my
you
age.
used on that video?
It was that new Carrie Underwood song,
Okay.
"Till I See You Again."
Play
And
that for her and say,
but
is
I
this
don't
the
want to
heaven song?
insinuate it to
Well,
her.
just say, does this sound like the heaven song?
Okay.
And see what she says, because she'll probably say, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Ask her, because she'll tell you, but she doesn't know any better not to tell you, so
Yeah.
she'll tell you the truth.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, next question. Hi.
About 2 months ago, I got rid of my landline, and the phone rings.
Well.
And I've called the landline, making sure.
Right.
You know. So I'm wondering, is someone trying to get through to me, or?
I would say that could be. Now, my son is an intern on a local sheriff's department, and he and his the man that he works with got called up because they kept getting 911 calls from this house. So they went out to check out the house, and it was an empty lot. And they called the owner of the property because they said, we're going to have to, press charges if we keep getting 911 calls. He said there hasn't been a house there in 20 years and there's no line there at all. And it keeps coming up as that address. So they were both a little creeped out by that. So sometimes, you can have drops that are confused going to the wrong place. But when that happens, make sure you make a note of the date and time it happened, because there can always be a logical explanation. But if there isn't, note also at that date and time what you're thinking about at that moment, where your mind was wandering and what you were doing. And if you start finding a pattern that you're thinking in an improper way, like, oh, I'm awful, I'm stupid, blah, blah, blah. If that happens every time you're doing that, you'll say, there's a message there. Or just see if there's a pattern. And next time it happens, just say hello out loud and see what happens. Because it absolutely could be a screwy drop, or it could be that somebody's trying to get you a message, absolutely.
And what about, toys, play phones, hello, goodbye, nobody's around?
Yeah, that is funny because my dad had a really weird sense of humor. My poor husband and I were talking about him one day, and my daughter's potty chair went on all by itself and played music, and that's my dad's sense of humor. So I think absolutely positively they can manipulate electronics. Back in the day, I used to tape record readings for people with magnetic tapes. They'd get home and they wouldn't work, and then they'd get mad and I stopped taping them. And people started bringing in digital recorders, which usually work, but the magnetic tapes sometimes wouldn't work. And when I was working on Paranormal Cops, we would be shooting. Everybody had full batteries, full lights. I'd walk in the room, start talking to a spirit, and all the batteries would go dead. Now, it would be coincidental if it happened once, but it happened all the time, and there was a pattern to it, and even the camera people knew that was going on. So I think sometimes They absolutely can communicate with us via electricity or electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs. They absolutely can, and I think they have senses of humor about it, because if I ever die before my sister when she's in a moment of passion with her husband, I've already decided I'm hovering above her bed like this. So I'm not going to do anything electronic. I'm going to be like this because I'm evil. But, you know, so I do think that's spirits, absolutely.
And one other question is, can you tell me who keeps like ever so slightly just touching the top of my head?
Well, when you feel that happen, do you feel in your heart that's a male or female?
Yeah.
So when you're feeling that do you feel like it is parental? Do you feel like it's more of someone being just funny, or is it coming with unconditional love?
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. So then, how you narrow that down, you say, well, who is it that always sent me unconditional love when I was here? And who is that male in my life that I love more than anything? And that's where you'll get your answer. Okay?
Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. I know you got a jog up there.
Yeah, I have a picture of it.
A picture, okay.
On vacation.
Is anybody naked?
Well, you'll have to tell me.
Oh, okay. Oh, the pink, oh, that's me. Or that's you. Huh. You know? Oh, yeah. No, it's literally you. Oh my, that's pretty cool. I don't know if anybody can see it, but it looks like a white specter. Now, was there a person standing there? That's you. Ooh, well, I don't know if anybody can see that. I know it's teeny tiny, but everything is dark and she is silhouetted in white light. Now, for photography people, they would tell you that, you know, there's different ways that that can happen and that there's a flash, but her whole body is liquid white light. And there is a belief system coming from Western philosophy that we have chakras in our body, which is a Sanskrit word for wheel of light, and that we have an aura that is about 3 feet outside our body, and it runs like a rainbow, like Roy G. Biv, up our body. And they say that this is called the third eye, and this is your intuitive center. And they say, like, when you lose your keys, you're like, where the hell did I put them? You're pounding your intuitive center there. So there is a belief that you can have an aura that is around your body and that you can photograph. And so that may be a trick of the light. It could have been because the temperature was such and such and the flash bounced off so-and-so's head and then lit you. But it could also be that you photographed your own aura, and that's A-U-R-A, and you can look that up online, and it's a pretty neat thing when that happens. So, oh neat, your boyfriend took it, awesome. So I would say look into aura, your life force around you, and I would bet you might have gotten a picture of it there. Kind of neat. And any other questions? No other questions? Really? Oh, here's another one. Next victim up for bid.
When I was little, I had 4 imaginary friends.
How neat.
So, and I mean, I wasn't a crazy kid, and I would have full-out conversations with them.
Right.
So I don't know what you think.
I really believe in my heart of hearts that imaginary friends are either our guides, our loved ones that have crossed over, or people that live in our house that are still there from a previous time. And most kids are very intuitive, and when we're about 9 or 10, we sometimes turn that off, and you can always turn it back on. But I would bet if you give them permission to come back, you might see and hear and feel them. You know, there's a great movie called Drop Dead Fred with Phoebe Cates, where her imaginary friend comes back to life and does awful things to her. So be careful, that could happen. But if you're open to it, you can figure out who they were. Absolutely. So that is not crazy. Yeah.
That you have a person come through, and the people that are on stage with you find are not the ones that they were looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow night, I'm going to bring somebody back up on stage who had been at one of the shows, and I was talking to her, and she looked at me and said, that makes no sense to me, I have no idea who they are. And I said, okay, you know, that sometimes happens, and it does. And then right after the show, I've been looking for someone, and I put an All Points bulletin out on Facebook and said, if you're the person that came up to me after and said, you were talking to my grandma and grandpa, come back. Because she came up after the show and said, I know you were talking to that lady on stage, but I told my grandparents that no matter what to come through, no matter what they had to do to get here, and they evidently did, but through the wrong person. So sometimes, absolutely yes, that can happen. And you know, when I do private readings, I'm in my office with one person by myself, so I know who your people are. But sometimes when you're in a big audience like this, you can get people coming over because they're so insistent that they have to come over, that can happen. So absolutely, positively.
And I think if we're the ones on stage, we want to believe that we're the ones that are targeted, so.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
If we're on stage, we're wanting to believe
Right.
that it's our person that's coming through.
Right, and that can happen, and sometimes it might not be your person, and you might be like, oh, this information doesn't make any sense to me, but it could be that it was for someone else, and sometimes it just is like a piece of the puzzle. When you get home, you figure out, oh my gosh, I know what they were talking about. So either way can happen, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, you just talked with me to my sister.
Okay.
About 2 months ago, something at home kept scaring me.
Okay.
Can you tell me if it was her?
You know, I would assume that might be, because when she comes forward, she's got her face buried in her hands, and she said, I'm so sorry. And I don't think it was her intent, but she's like, So I would say that's probably her.
She truly believes in this, and I was always very skeptical.
Right.
And when she passed away, she said, I will come back and talk to you. I said, Donna Mae, I will never forgive you. And so before the show...
So did you forgive her?
Before the show, I said, this is your time. If you are ever going to speak to me, get me tonight.
Oh my gosh.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Aww. Well, I just want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for supporting me, because when Nikki and Tony asked me to do shows, I said, oh my gosh, who would ever come and see me, really? And so I'm really glad that there's more than one person that would actually show up to see me. So that's pretty exciting. But this is the most beautiful gift you can ever give yourself, is the opportunity to believe that you can do this, and you all can do this just as well as I can, if not better. I suggest you read as many books as you can, talk to your spiritual leaders about why or why not this is a good idea for you, but really delve into it, open up your heart to it, and just be aware that if you're open, you can still talk to your people, even if I didn't get to them. And so I couldn't be more happy with being here and hearing all of your beautiful stories, and it takes so much courage to come up on stage and have your heart so vulnerable. So I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart, and I want to thank Richard for taking his time to tell such a beautiful story, and I want to thank you all for supporting me. Thank you so much. Thank you.